one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Project Egg Show. I'm your host, Ben Gothard, and today we have the honor of speaking with Pat Hiban. How you doing today, Pat?
Good, buddy. You didn't botch my name. I appreciate that.
I was sweating that one, but
yeah, I could tell you paused. You're like,
I'm so
maybe that was for effect.
Yeah, it was definitely for dramatic. So I'm so glad that you could come on the show because I really wanted to ask you, what is your story?
Yeah, really? What is our story? I hate that. I don't hate it, but it's an interesting thing, right? I can tell you my story. I had it was funny because I live in Folly Beach, South Carolina. I'm going to digress a little bit if that's okay. And we're getting ready to hit Hurricane Dorian, and a reporter grabbed me from France, believe it or not, when I was out walking the dog this morning. And she's like, "Hey, I'm a reporter." And I was able to sneak in past the National Guard because there's only like 100 people staying here on the island. And somehow she got in and she's like, "Why? What do you do, sir?" And I always struggle with that. And I'm like, well, and so anyways, my story is how I got to where I am, I guess. So my bottom line is, right, I was born in Maryland. I was a real estate agent, full-time real estate agent for, 25 years or so. Along the path of selling houses, I did what most agents don't, and that's, and I invested in what I talked about, right? And so I invested, and I was able to invest wisely, did well with investments. And so I own residential real estate, commercial real estate. And then I invested in several small startup companies. And I was able to retire at 46 years of age, and then basically just do whatever the hell I wanted to do from that point forward, and on purpose, consciously, because my kids at that time were becoming teenagers, and I wanted to, spend more time with them because they were going to be going off to college soon. So I purposefully did it at that time. And then I just kind of, really didn't pick up on any massive grind after getting out of real estate sales. I did eventually start a mastermind company of my own with two of my good friends of over 20 some years, who I also own shopping centers and investments with. And so we started GoBundance 5 years ago, and that's our mastermind. And I've written 2 books along the way, 6 Steps to 7 Figures and Tribe of Millionaires. And, I've just, I kind of was thinking about that after that lady from France asked me what the hell I did. And if you ever known anybody, Ben, that like buys houses and then like fixes them up dramatically, and then all of a sudden sells them like 2 years later, and then they do it again, and they keep doing it, and they're kind of like hooked on fixing stuff up and selling it and buying new stuff. And I think I'm that way, except not with houses and fixing things up. I'm not handy at all, but I'm that way with like investing and shit. So I'm like constantly like selling this investment and buying this investment, selling this investment and buying this investment, and constantly changing the things around. And so anyways, that's my life now. I guess at the end of the day, I'm an investor first and foremost. And then secondly, I help run GoBundance, which is a mastermind for businessmen.
So that seems like kind of the short story, but I want to know the long story. Like, if you were to really tell the narrative of who you are, what would that be?
Well, wow. Okay. So, I have 2 tattoos, right? And they're both meaningful. Like I'm going to show you, it's not illegal. Hold on. So I got, and I know we're live. I don't give a shit. Okay. So I get this one here that basically says, can you read that?
One life fully lived.
Yeah, one life fully lived. And that's where I started out, when I got that when I was 40, actually. And I was like, I'm going to retire. And and I'm going to just, focus on fulfilling my life and start going cool places and doing cool things. And then eventually, then I got this one, which is, I got this with my kids, birthstone colors, and my wife's birthstone colors. Love is spelled time, in crayon. And that's because, I want to spend more time, because I believe that at the end of the day, really all people want is time. My mom recently was like, look, I'm trying to consolidate, stop giving me stuff. Stop bringing me home stuff from your vacations. The only thing you can give me at this point in my life is take me to the movies, spend time with me. So I think really, we all don't reach that point enough. And so I'm telling you this because I think that it does answer your question. And then it kind of goes a little bit to my soul. Obviously, if I would tattoo it on myself twice, two different messages, it ties a little bit to my soul of who I am, and how I became that person was, I think growing up, I yearned for parental time more, right? It was 5 kids, and then my dad and mom divorced when I was 12, and I didn't see much of my dad at all after that. And I, really didn't see much of my mom. I mean, although she ran the house, there were 5 kids all within like 6 years of age. And so it was pretty chaotic, all those teenagers at once. So it wasn't any one-on-one time. And I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that maybe is the story behind the story, is kind of what you're looking for. And so I think that drove me to kind of succeed so that I could have more free time. Certainly in the beginning, I don't think I had free time, from say 22 to 32, let's say, mainly because I was busting my ass and probably chasing other things, or trying to get to that point of being a millionaire or multimillionaire, what it was. But I think I always knew that the light at the end of the tunnel was a lot more free time, and being able to spend more time with people than my parents were able to spend with me. And that's kind of where the tattoos came from, and the desire came from, right? I knew that if I didn't have a certain amount of money, I'd probably be yearning for it. So I had to keep, I had to get enough to feel okay to like not have to work. I used to take time off when I was hustling and all that in my early years, and then I would just feel so guilty, and I'm saying it was terribly wrong, but I think that the only saving grace was that, hey, I'm going to stop this someday, and I'm going to really take time off. You'll see. And then that's when I met my one business partner, GoBundance, Tim Road. I met him. He retired at 40, and he used to bust his ass, and he kind of like changed a lot mentally. Like one dude said to him one time, he said, Tim, you've lost your edge. And he said on purpose. And he told me that, and I said, I kind of like that, right? If someone says, Pat, you lost your edge, say, well, on purpose. Because now look at me right now, my stress level is so much less. If I were to die today, I certainly I'd be sad, but I would know that I gave it my all. And, like I just got back from Zion last night, actually. I went hiking with my 2 daughters. I took them hiking in Zion, and did a bunch of cool hikes there in Utah. Then we drove to Vegas. I taught them how to play craps and how to play blackjack, and kind of went to a show and stuff like that. And then, just, no regrets, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of what I've been trying to build now, rather than other than just, moving my investments around, which takes very little time and is exciting for me too. You know what I mean? Because it's truly, my money works for me, Ben. I don't work for my money.
That's a really interesting philosophy of It's because it seems like the real gold is the time.
Hmm.
And to really be able to have the time to do with it what you wish, and to give yourself pretty much unlimited freedom.
Yeah, it's funny, right? You hear about these guys, these really rich guys that die, and they got these estates, right? And it's almost like you hear them sometimes, you're like, damn, son, why didn't you spend it when you were alive? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, and then their kids get it, whatever. And then they're like, hey, quit their job or whatever, or certainly, you know, go on vacations more and spend it. You know what I mean? Rarely does it make it to the next generation. So it's kind of like, I think sometimes that people really do build wealth for internal reasons and have nothing logically to do with, um, buying more time. Um, it's an interesting concept. I remember one time I went on a trip about 10 years ago, and I asked, it was one of these REI adventure trips, and it was in Slovenia and Romania and Bulgaria. I know that sounds bizarre, but different places I hadn't been. And Tim and David and I went, and we were stuck with 10 other people, not stuck, but we were placed with 10 other people we didn't know in a bus during this trip. And I interviewed them all, and I said, how much is enough? And I wrote it down in my journal because I'm a big journaler. And it seemed like the consensus was $5 million. Like, people hate to think about that, right? You say, how much is enough? And if they have if they have 10, $20 million, 30, $100 million, they're never going to tell you, they're never going to give you an answer to that, right? They just won't. They just won't. It's usually the people that aren't, multimillionaires that will actually give you the answer. And so, the consensus was, like I said, about 5 million. Some people said 1 million, which today's, $1 million is not enough. $1 million is not enough. It's not going to feed you. It's not going to be able to keep you, if you live to 95, you're screwed, right? So I don't know. It's a fascinating thought, though, right? And people don't want to think about it, but certainly, I think you could, if someone to get $5 to $10 million in a lottery, they would probably easily say, "Screw this." You know what I mean? Like, I'm bailing. I'm going to just chill. So if we earn and have a net worth of 5 to 10 million, why can't we just retire and be like, hey, I'm going to just chill? What's wrong with that?
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think once you've earned that and built that, like, you have the right to do whatever the hell you want to do. So,
Yeah. Why is it that we don't? Why is it that people keep going?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would imagine a lot of it has to do with the beliefs that we hold about what we need to do and what we need to accomplish in order to be fulfilled, or to be happy, or to be worthy. I believe it definitely goes back to what we're actually telling ourselves, both consciously and subconsciously.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then you got to ask, kind of like you just asked, what's the story behind the story? Like you almost got to ask, like, who taught you that? Yeah.
That's interesting.
Whose voice is in your head? Right. And it probably, it's usually your mom. I mean, it's usually your dad, actually. For guys, it's usually their dad. But some authority figure told you that, or multiple authority figures. I mean, and I'm not saying it's wrong to keep going. A lot of people I know keep going, and and they believe in there's a saying that's what is it? The pursuit of happiness, and they believe the pursuit is happiness.
Hmm.
So, I do think there's some belief in, I agree with that. It's just, I guess, a matter of how many hours a week you want to pursue, how many hours a week you want to be in the game, right? And obviously I still want to be in the game because like I came on the show today, I'm, I've written 2 books. I'm investing in several new things this month. I still want to be in a game, but I don't think I want to be in the game like all the time. Like I was just 5 days in Zion and I shut my email down. I'm like, look, I'm in Zion with my daughters. I'll get you when I get you. So I like to think there's a balance, I guess.
That's interesting. Because a lot of people, I feel like people are either in two camps there with the balance idea of there is no such thing as balance.
Mm.
It has to be like an integration or a harmony or something. And then I feel like other people always say there has to be a balance and you have to figure that out or else you're not going to be happy.
Hmm. Gary Keller always says, if you read his book, the one thing he says that there is no balance. There's just constant counterbalance. Like people don't really balance. Like they're not like, unless you're like a monk or something, right? You're like, you're here and then you're like, shit, I need to get, I need to balance it out. So then you balance it out and then you get here and you're like, damn, I've been sitting by the pool for a week and I feel like being productive. And then you go back here. I feel like that's how my life is, like if I sit around too much, I mean, I live on an island, right? I live on the beach and people come here and visit and their expectation is that we go to the beach. And I'm like, truth be told, you know, I'm happy to go to the beach with you one day. But the second day, if you're going to sit there and read magazines or whatever, but the second day I need some counterbalance, right? I need, at least if we're going to go to the beach, we're going to be drinking. We're going to, drinking for a sport, meaning like for something to do, right? Like we're going to be playing a game. We're going to be engaging, in some form or fashion. Maybe we're going to hike 5 miles up the beach and 5 miles down. There's got to be some sort of counterbalance because if I have that resting, I can really only do like a day, sitting there reading magazines. And I think the same is true with anything that I do. If I go to a GoBundance event for 3 days and I'm going strong, masterminding and networking with people, when I come home, I just want to chill. I don't want to do anything for 3 days, and I don't want to go right back into more work. So
Let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about the journey, like the pursuit versus what is being pursued. Because I feel like a lot of people, especially those that are listening to the show, are still very much in the game. I mean, either just starting out or aspiring to be entrepreneurs or doing something to where they know they're waking up and they're just working and they're going after it and they're going hard. Do you think that knowing what you know now, you would have approached when you were in that hustle zone, that hustle mode differently, knowing what you know now, or would you have done it the exact same way?
I would have done it the same. And the reason I say that is because sometimes I feel very fortunate. Like when my daughters and I were playing blackjack the 2 days ago, the dealer said, you got to be smart. You got to be smart. And then one dude said, you got to be lucky. Like she was trying to teach my girls, like, you got to be smart about the cards you pick. And then a random dude sitting near us was like, you got to be lucky. Well, and I said, well, the story of my life is luck, not smarts. Cause I got a 2.3 GPA in college and I've never been, I never would boast say, hey, I'm the smartest guy. Cause a lot of shit's above my pay grade, but I don't understand it. And, I think I got lucky, but I think that I did create my own luck by working really hard. And I think the key is, also, I guess there is some smarts or some knowledge, at least, of what to do with money when you get it. I think that so many Americans especially fail at that because what they do is they make money and they don't save it and they don't invest it, and that was one thing I've always been good at is, like I said, it was just almost addiction that I would have to invest it. I could have certainly bought a car or a watch or, jewelry or something, and I was like, my goals used to be like, I would save $10,000 or I would buy another house or, you know what I mean? It never was like, I will buy a Rolex watch. Never had a Rolex, never had anything like that. It just didn't make logical sense to me. So I think that yeah, I wouldn't do it. Yeah, I really wouldn't change anything because I think that if I changed something, I would have learned differently and I might not have saved like I did. I might not have invested like I did. I've been lucky. I mean, there's certainly mistakes I've made in investments. I've certainly lost lots of money and I've not gotten behind things that took off, but you never really know. I tell my wife, I tell her all the time, I said, we're really not going to know whether we're making the right decisions till we're like 95 years old, sitting on the front porch of a mobile home. And someone asks, some great grandkid says, were you happy with the way your investments turned out? Or were you happy when you did this or that? Was that smart or whatever? You don't know, right? Because you could have failures. Like I had a failure. I mean, I had a great situation. Like this is a true story. I went after I got out of real estate sales. My buddy was friends with a Ricky Williams, who was an NFL guy that is known in the marijuana circles. And I said to him, this was like 5 years ago. I said, dude, you need to endorse the cannabis space because that's where your background is. That's what you're known for is cannabis. And he was like, cool. So me and him went to Colorado, and I spent all this time, right, kind of like being an agent and trying to get a cannabis deal. And this is when Colorado just legalized cannabis. And I was like, we could do this. Now I really put 6 months of hard work into this. And the industry was too early, right? They weren't ready for any endorsements and they're still not ready, really for like major endorsements because they're not allowed to do commercials on a wide scale yet. You don't see them unless you go to some, things like some other things. So anyways, to make a long story short, what happened was, so that fell apart, right? I didn't make any money and I spent like all this time doing it. But one of the companies that we interviewed with to ask them to endorse him or to ask them to pay him money to advertise their firm, I really liked the guys. And so I kept in touch with them. And then they reached out to me, say, we're raising money. And so I gave them a bunch of money and I didn't think anything of it. That was like 4 years ago. They recently just got bought by the Canadians because in Canada, of course, it's, federally legal and they can do all kinds of stuff that we can't do here in the US. And they got bought by the Canadians and I made like a shit ton of money that I didn't think I was going to make. And my point being is that you don't know until your time passes because like at the time, I was bitching and complaining. Also, that company that I invested in almost went out of business. And then it finally, started making some money and it got bought at the last minute before it went out of business. So you just don't know until you look back on it and being like, hey, you wasted time, doing this Ricky Williams thing. Well, no, I didn't really waste time because this happened because of it, but if I look at just that 1 6-month period, yeah, I wasted a lot of time. So it's really hard to answer that question until you're really old. It's like, I don't know if you've ever heard that story about the Chinese farmer. Have you heard that? Mm-hmm. So there's a story about the Chinese farmer, and basically what happens is, Chinese farmer has 2 horses and he makes his money. He's got a couple of kids and a wife and whatever, and a farm, and he's got 2 horses, and one of the horses dies, and all the neighbors come over and say, no, one of the horses runs away. I'm sorry, ran away into the woods, and he couldn't find him. All the neighbors come over and they're like, that sucks, dude. Your horse ran away. 50% of your production now in grain or whatever is going to be shot. You only have one horse, da 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 da. And he says, we'll see. And then like a week passes and the horse comes back, but with it comes like 8 other horses, wild horses that were following it. So he gets them all in corralled, and now he has 10 horses. And all the neighbors come over and they're like, wow, you're so lucky. Now you own 10 horses. And he says, we'll see. So now he has 10 horses, 8 of them are wild. So his son has to train them. So his son's out training the horses, sitting on a horse, and he bucks them off, and he goes flying off the horse and lands into a fence, breaks both his legs. And all the neighbors come over and say, yeah, that fucking sucks. You know, your son broke both his legs. He was your number one worker. Now you're going to lose all this money. And he says, we'll see. And then the next day, the army comes and they're like, we're fighting Genghis Khan. You know, we need to, every kid between the ages of 18 and 30 is being drafted into the army. So we're taking your son because we know you have an 18-year-old son. And he goes, well, look, he just broke both his legs and you can't take him. So they rode off without him. So the moral of the story obviously is we'll see, right? You just never know. You know, you really never know until the day before you die.
So I totally agree with you. And I actually love that story. I've never heard it before. But I'm curious now, if we don't know until later, it seems like we have to equip ourselves with the decision-making tools that give us the best chance of being the most right or the most successful, or give us the best chance of achieving the outcome that we want. So how did you go about equipping yourself with the decision-making tools to make the best possible decisions that you could?
That's a great question. Unequivocally, it was through masterminds and through, meeting other people and sharing, helping each other out, me helping them out, them helping me out, learning best practices, right? And best tools from people who have gone there before. You know, like Tony Robbins says, success leaves clues, right? So, find someone who's successful in what you want to be successful about and find the clues. And it's easy, and so that's how I've done it.
When you're thinking about how to find that person who's done what you've already, who's already done what you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
it would seem to me that you would need to know and have an understanding of what it is that you want to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen people that, that just go to every seminar they can go to and try to get mentors in all these different areas. And then I've seen people like this, but they aren't focused at all on what it is, that they want and how they're going to get there. And they're kind of like in a eternal search to figure that out. But I think you're right. I think you got to figure. I mean, you got to see where people are making money and see where people are being successful today, and then say, okay, that's the one. That's what I'm going to do, and just go full out into it.
How do you know which one's the right one?
So that's a great question. So what I did, right? I can just speak from my story. I got out of college. I had a degree in sociology. I got a 2.3 GPA. I couldn't even get it. I wanted to be a probation officer, but they wouldn't. They said you got a year and a half wait, and you probably won't get the job anyways. And so I said, okay, well, let me go into sales. And I had friends that were selling things like machines, like software, or actually back then it wasn't software; it was Xerox machines, right? Copy machines, things like that. And every time they sold something, they'd make $150. And then I saw this thing called real estate, and the guy said, yeah, well, your average commission is like $3,000. And I said, well, damn, why won't I just, sell something I can make $3,000 when my friend's making $150 for a sale? To me, it's just logical, right? And so, that's where I went. I went to where the money was flowing, what made sense. It's kind of like the people that, got into cable TV when it was just regular antenna TV, right? That was where the money was flowing, or the people that got into digital phones before, when everyone was using landline phones, that was where the money's flowing. You know, and a lot of money now. One of the reasons I like the cannabis space is because there's a lot of money going to be flowing there, like it is in Canada, where it's not in the U.S. yet. And there's people making billions in Canada, but you can't in the U.S. yet. And so I like that space. And so I think that if you find something where you can make a lot of money per transaction, and you could go into an ascending market, as the experts call it, ascending market. That's the answer to the question. That's what you should do. Don't go, don't go in the, now you don't go into cable TV because cable TV is dying, right? You got streaming. So you'd be stupid to start working for a cable company. Does that make sense? You don't want to go where the industry is probably dissipating. You want to go to where the industry has a lot of growth. And I know a lot of people in the real estate game that made a killing, whether they're doing a real estate pocket, like a Bigger Pockets podcast, or whether they, did investments themselves, or whether they earned real estate commissions in the past 8 years or so. Right. That was a great thing to get into 8 years ago. Maybe not so much now, because it's going to eventually, you're going to have a downturn. And so, what's next? That's what you got to decide.
So once you identify where the money's flowing, and it looks like it's an uptick, like an increasing trend,
mm-hmm.
How do you decide how to go into that market? Because there are so many different things you can do. I mean, you could be in sales, you could build a product, you could, do a service, or so on and so forth. How do you really carve out your space, your piece?
That's great. So let's say someone's listening to this that doesn't have a savings, or what I mean, is just getting started out.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, my advice is, you go into some sort of a sales, right? Because salespeople I was having this conversation with my daughters yesterday. The salespeople, they make all the money in the world, right? You can make, like, there's kids that they went to college with that are making, over $100,000, because they're in sales, right? Where everybody else that's not in sales is averaging probably 50, 55 grand a year. So, it's not right or wrong. It just is. So you want to go into sales if you can, if you have that personality, right? If you're not going to get burnt out and you don't mind the rejection. And you want to go in an ascending market, something that's going to be easier to sell, something that's going to sell itself, right? You don't want to be the guy pushing, vacuum cleaners when Dyson is selling itself online, right? So, you want to go, like we already talked about that. So go something where it makes it easier, where something's selling itself, go into sales because you make a lot of commissions. And then my recommendation is you do two things. You save a lot of money, and you invest that money in assets that pay you sideways, income sideways, like real estate with rent and dividend paying companies and things like that. And then in addition to that, you eventually, strive to have the American dream, which is open your own company or open your own division. And you just learn from somebody, first of all, through a sales process, how to do it. Then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to create this is the American way, right? American way is you go work for somebody else, and then you essentially copy what they're doing and make it better and open up your own company. Everybody does that. That's just how they do it.
That's awesome. I love that. Because it seems like it's just that's a roadmap. And I think there are a lot of different ways, like, for example, I never learned how to do podcasting from anybody else. I really just made all the mistakes and figured it out.
Yeah.
And that's like, that's one route. So I think there are a lot of different routes, but I think you really just laid out a roadmap to where if somebody wants to do something, or they want to become financially free, or they want to get to a point where they can focus on their investments and they can go to Zion and hike around because they want to, like, there's almost no excuses now, because it's like, okay, now you know how to do it. You have the blueprint, you have the roadmap. So now it's up to you to take that initiative to just put in the effort and do it.
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate you mapping it out like that, because I just talk, and then, I'll have to listen to this recording and and write that roadmap down. I appreciate the vote of confidence.
Well, I appreciate you doing the hard work and figuring it out.
That's true. I did put some years, I guess, at the end of the day. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to take the roadmap even a step further, though.
Okay.
Once you get to the point where you have your own thing going and you have the income coming in, there's cash flow entering into your life, into your ecosystem.
Yes.
How do you then parlay that into making your money work for you?
Yeah, and some of that is universal. Like I said, some of it's like that investment I did. I mean, it's just universal. Just like that stuff was just brought to me, right? I didn't seek that out. First and foremost, the way that I did it, and the easiest way for most people to do it without getting their head kicked in is real estate, right? Because you can buy a piece of real estate, you can figure out, I'll buy it for this much, my mortgage payment is this much, and the rent is this much, and the math isn't too hard, right? If you look at the majority of the really rich people in this society, a huge amount, like well over half, got rich on real estate, right? Because real estate goes up in value. Generally, it goes, there's a lot of tax benefits to it. If you have a tenant there, the tenant is essentially paying down your mortgage for you, building equity for you. There's a lot of benefits to real estate. And it's easy to do because the banks are out there that will lend you 80-90% of what the house is worth. Where if you go and try to buy a company, you pretty much are putting in your own cash, or if you're buying a stock or you're buying some Apple stock, you're using your own 100% of your own cash, not 20% of it or 10% of it like you would on a piece of real estate. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So real estate is the easiest way to create we like to call it horizontal income, which is income coming in horizontally sideways, as opposed to vertical. Vertical is where you work at a job and you get a 5% raise, and in the next year you get a 5% raise, or you're in a sales job and you sell 40 cars one year and 42 the next, or 45 the next. That's all vertical, trading time for money and pushing your income up vertically. I like to do it horizontally, where I buy this piece of property, buy this commercial building, invest in other companies, things like that pay me sideways. So, I'm getting paid regardless of whether I work or not. I could take a month off and go to Greece and live in a house, and I'd still have, stuff coming in sideways that would be paying my bills. And so I think the goal is to try to build as many of those as you can. David Osborne, my partner in GoBundance, has 273 horizontal lines of income, meaning little things that pay him. Even if they pay him $50, when you have, 273 of them, it adds up. I have about 43. So he's got me beat by about 230 lines of income, but he went at it a lot harder at an early age and hit some home runs. So, but the idea is that, even if you have 10 of them, you could probably, with 10 of them, you could probably pay your monthly bills, providing you're not living above your means.
That's awesome. Because it seems like once you start setting up these streams and you're getting paid horizontally, then once you overcome, I feel like the first major milestone is paying all of your bills.
Right.
Once you can pay all of your bills with those horizontal income streams, then it's like, okay, now how much can I ramp this up to start generating the sort of capital or the sort of cash flow that I really want and need to do the things that I want to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's a confidence level too, it just gives you, it helps your confidence a lot. You know what I mean? Once you get those bills paid, it kind of relaxes you and you're like, you know what? I don't have, if this doesn't work, I'm all right. If this, it's kind of like the Ricky Williams thing, right? If it didn't work, well, it was okay. Cause I had the money coming in, you know what I mean? And then the guy's like, hey, do you want to invest with us? I was like, yeah, I'll give you some money. And I'm like, well, if it doesn't work, it's okay. I can lose that money. So it enabled me, gave me power, I guess, to do both of those things where normally I wouldn't have had the power wouldn't have existed at all because I've been too busy working, you know what I mean? To try to pay my bills.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a ton of sense. Well, Pat, I want to thank you so much for sharing some of your time today. I want to be very respectful of that time. So I do have one more question for you. Then we'll wrap it on up.
Yeah, bring it on, Ben.
So I'm 24, and the reason I say that is because I want to ask specifically from my perspective.
Okay.
But what question should I be asking you that I just wouldn't think to ask?
How about like, what is one specific thing that I could tell you to do every month that will incrementally increase your wealth?
And what would that be?
Writing down or recording on your computer your net worth. And I'm a mentor of mine did this every month, and he taught me to do it. And even if your net worth is $100, if you do it every single month, you're going to get annoyed with yourself that it stayed at $100. Like, let's say you have $100 in a savings account. You're going to get so annoyed with it that you're going to put $10 in, so you could just write down 110 in February and 100 in January. And then eventually hopefully you're going to get a little bit addicted to it and be like, well, I want it to be 10 grand. Then you're going to have 10 grand saved up. And then someone's going to come to you and say, hey, I'll sell you this thing for $5 grand. It'd be really cool. And everyone think you're successful. Go, no. I want to make this 10 grand, 20 grand. I want to make this 20 grand, 30 grand. Or I want to buy a house with this. And then I want to buy a second house and a third house and fourth. And just by recording it, it's going to create life to something called, Ben's net worth. And if you never record it, your net worth is just going to go, it could be anything, right? It's kind of like I taught my kids, I always taught my kids to watch their credit score, like pay attention to it. Where is it every month? Go on Credit Karma. Where is it every month? If you don't watch it, you're never going to know whether it's going to go down or up, right? But watch that shit, and it's the same thing with your worth. How much money do you have in the bank this month, next month? What's your net worth? And I've been recording mine for 30 years. You know what I mean? And every month, like if it's not more than the month before, it at least gives me pause to say, maybe one or two of these investments are bad deals. Maybe I should sell them and buy something that's going to make it worth more. Or maybe I should stop spending so much and save some money this month.
That is awesome. I've never thought to do that before.
Yeah. No, somebody talked to me years ago, and it's like, it's been key. And then you just get, like I said, you get addicted to it. It's just like, well, you can't, like one guy said, there was this a long time ago, a bunch of people came out with this thing called The Secret, which is you just give yourself affirmations saying, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire. And then suddenly you'll become a millionaire. But the problem with that is, if you never take action on that affirmation, it's not going to do anything. You're just going to be sitting in your living room for 10 years saying, I'm a millionaire. So you at least got to save $100 a month in order to get 1 million. You know what I mean? You at least got to at least got to take action. And then once you take that action, then you got to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to be able to do this again? And if you're spending more than you're making, then you're going to be like, well, how can I get another job, or how can I make more money at my job so that my net worth continues to go up? It's going to create that thought process to keep moving you up the chain rather than just staying mediocre. And I think a lot of people think that all is good and everything's fine so long as all their bills are paid, right? But that's not it, right? The whole idea is to build net worth. Otherwise, you're gonna be working. You're gonna be working at Starbucks at 95 years old.
You're absolutely right. So I think that's a tremendously small piece of effort to put in today and every month that could lead to such a tremendously big impact in how you think and like the quality of your life and your career over a very long period of time. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Pat, thank you again so much for coming on the show. It's truly been an honor to spend this time with you. So I just want to say thank you very much.
You're welcome, Ben. It was fun, man. Great questions, dude. Good questions.
Thank you. Thank you. And to everybody who's watching and listening, I want to say thank you all very, very much. Y'all are the reason that I do this. And I'm very grateful that y'all choose to share some of your time with us today. So thank y'all very much. Pat, thank you. And I will see y'all on the next episode.